everyone. I'm Bob Ackerman, the editor-in-chief of Signal Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to our Signal Magazine webinar titled, What to Consider When Purchasing an Unmanned System. In today's webinar, which is sponsored by Panasonic, two experts will discuss how to control and effectively exploit the unmanned systems that are proliferating across the battle space. Now, those of you who have participated in past Signal webinars are familiar with our audience interface. Throughout the presentation, webinar attendees are encouraged to submit questions electronically through the Ask a Question box on the webinar console. When our experts are finished with their presentations, they will answer as many questions as time permits during this hour-long session. Today's first presenter is Jeff Henderson, Strategic Account Manager, Army Special Services at Panasonic. Jeff helps the Army, defense agencies, and NATO partners deploy mission-critical mobile solutions that digitally transform the way they work. Our second presenter is Ryan English, CEO and co-founder of FLYMOTION. Ryan's company focuses on providing innovative unmanned systems, technology integration, and services for companies around the world. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Jeff Henderson. Jeff?
Great, thanks, Bob, and thanks for everyone for jumping on this morning. So what we're going to go through is a little background on Panasonic in general, then drill into a little background on the TOUGHBOOK division of Panasonic, and then ultimately into what we do to support the unmanned systems community and specifically the UAV community. So glad Ryan was able to join us today. Ryan and I actually met at Operation Convergent Response last year and decided to form sort of a strategic partnership between our two companies. So I'll then let Ryan tell you guys more about his company. So again, a little background on Panasonic. So we were formed in 1918. So not just a laptop company, we're a division of a very large global company with over 100-year-old history. We do $73 billion in annual sales. We have roughly 271,000 employees with a focus on business to business. So we do a lot of things that people don't even realize we do. So most of the TVs you see in an aircraft are Panasonic. We're actually the largest battery manufacturer in the world. So Tesla uses Panasonic batteries in their vehicles. So really just point being at the core, we're an engineering company that are able to do numerous things like product development changes, things that customers need us to do for specific products, improve products, fix problems for customers. So very capable company. And then more in our division, so Panasonic North America was founded in 1959. We have just under 800 employees, 7 locations here in the U.S. We do roughly $1.2 billion in revenue, and our U.S. headquarters is in Newark, New Jersey. So I'll touch on more of this later in the presentation as it applies to this market, but as I mentioned before, we're a core engineering company, so owning the whole process from design to manufacturing to support really allows us to do custom things for customers, to change direction quickly, to fix problems. I remember the first time I went to the factory, it really made an impression on me when I was able to see a Panasonic machine making a Panasonic laptop. So that just, again, really made it take hold. We're an engineering production company that, again, owns this whole process and allows us to do things that we're able to support our customers very well through. And then more recently, we've actually made a shift to more of a business-to-business focus. So able to leverage the knowledge we gain from consumer technology, but also now produce high-quality products that help our customers complete their mission. And then to get down into the rugged mobility space, so we've been in this space for over 20 years. We came out with our first fully rugged clamshell notebook in 1999. We came out with the first integrated wireless unit. So we actually in Japan have our own wireless testing chamber. So we very high quality wireless connections. And then also came out with the first semi-rugged laptop for slightly less demanding environments. So a lot of history in this space. And then from a customer standpoint, I'm sorry. From a customer standpoint, we help customers perform mission critical functions from everything from the battlefield to logistics applications, work in the utility space. Probably most of you are aware we do a lot of work in public safety and law enforcement. And we take that responsibility very seriously. So we make highly reliable devices, devices that are extremely safe to operate in those environments. We do things like ANSI hazardous location certifications for work around fuel cells and oil and gas. So these are the people we support on a daily basis. And then from a product line standpoint, today we've got a wide range of products. So that product on the left is our new semi-rugged ToughBook 55. We have 2 fully rugged Windows tablets. We have 3 rugged Android handhelds and 2 fully rugged 2-in-1s. So across the line, we've got a wide range of products to support different mission sets, different form factors. So good product line today. And then from an Android standpoint, we're actually seeing many people in this community moving to Android. So using Android products for whether that be controller or a display unit. We as a company have a new focus on Android. So we've added new things like engineering resources for Android support. That product on the left is our new fully rugged 10-inch Android tablet, the A3. We just released that a couple of weeks ago. And then on the right, you'll see the tactical variant of our fully rugged Android handheld. So that's the N1, and use it to support applications like Android Tactical Assault Kit, or ATAK, and even working with companies today to feed imagery directly into ATAK on multiple devices. So doing a lot more work in the Android space. And then specifically in this market, I mentioned the core manufacturer before, so very important in this space. So if people design a solution around our products and then we make an unexpected change, that can obviously be extremely problematic. So being able to show customers a very long roadmap, have strategic discussions with them is really helpful. A couple of examples here. We stood up a program with one of our defense integrator customers in 2014 who built a custom controller around our M1 tablet. And they've been able to support that program without making any changes since its inception in 2014. One other example, I met with a good customer a month ago, and they were actually about to design a solution around a product that I was able to tell them, unfortunately, is going away next year. So it's actually been out for almost 7 years, but we were able to catch them and at the last minute make a change to, he's actually going to design that solution around that A3 tablet. And we'll be able to support that program for years with a brand new product. So just being able to have those kind of strategic discussions with customers is extremely helpful. And then from a mission execution standpoint, our devices perform in the field very well for various reasons. So one example, we have extremely bright daylight readable displays up to 1200 nits. As I mentioned before, we're the largest battery manufacturer in the world, so we make the batteries for our devices, and those can be up to 2 times longer than average devices out in the field. We also, many of our devices now have hot swappable batteries, so we can support long mission sets or even up to 24/7 operations. We have Panasonic patented rain and glove mode inputs on multiple devices today. So this actually works very well in the rain. It works in the snow. They work with multiple different types of gloves. And beyond just being durable products, which people typically know us for, we're also extremely reliable. So across the board, we have a sub 2% average annual failure rate. And then back to the design point, so we actually design our products to pass military standard testing, so multiple different durability tests under MIL standard 810G and soon H. And then also design products to meet standards like MIL standard 461F and soon to be G. So we do things like putting shielding around the wireless LAN adapters, the CPUs, the RAM in machines. So actually one application here where that comes into play, in a lot of these solutions, we've got to program a radio that will be the comms piece of one of these solutions. So 461F is typically required in that kind of environment. And then lastly, from an ingress protection standpoint, multiple products pass IP65, 67, 68. So, obviously operating in inclement weather very frequently. So IP65, 7, 8 come in handy for those environments. So that's an overview of why we think we're the best partner for a UAV manufacturer to partner with. And obviously you mentioned FLYMOTION before, so I'll let Ryan talk more about this, but they used to have kind of a mix of different devices in their solutions, but we're now using multiple TOUGHBOOKs in a lot of their solutions and testing more today. So I'll let Ryan tell you guys more about his company and that partnership, but thank you again for joining this morning, and hopefully we'll take some good questions later.
Thanks, Jeff, for the handoff. Glad to get on the call and talk about UAS and some of the stuff that FLYMOTION and Panasonic are doing together. So a little bit of backstory. Both myself and my business partner, we come out of the operational side, both in public safety and the military, and wanted to, about 6 years ago, a little over, we started the company, and really the drive for that was to bring innovative new technology solutions and services to the communities that we had worked in. And, since that time have continued to do that. Our core customer base are your local, state, federal agencies and Department of Defense. And we support clients both here in the U.S. and also globally as well. Still primarily within the verticals that I mentioned. And really, we are a end-to-end solution provider. So, we're providing everything from, hardware, software, system, technical integration, building mobile command centers for UAS or drone operations. We do an extensive amount of training as well. And really, when we're looking at UAS and how to get into UAS, obviously there's a lot of factors that I'll talk about here in a moment. One of the things I think makes FLYMOTION a bit unique as a company is we're a bit of a hybrid as not only an end-to-end technology solution provider, but we also have a service side of our business where we're providing operational support to a variety of different government and private entities for disaster response and other security type operations. So it gives our staff a lot of time, the ability to not only be able to provide these solutions to end customers for their operations, but also be involved in the operations and see how the technology works, in real world operations. And, that really was what drew us very early on to Panasonic and creating a partnership with them is, in my past life before FLYMOTION, obviously I've used a lot of Panasonic TOUGHBOOK devices, and they always performed. And, so, when we look to partner with a ruggedized provider of, laptops, tablets, things of that nature. There really wasn't another name that came to my mind besides Panasonic. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about is training. And I think a lot of people, when they initially look at considering purchasing a UAS, training seems to always be one of the biggest things that seems to be forgotten about. And in my opinion, it is the most important thing that needs to be thought about before acquiring hardware. As I mentioned, our training staff, we train a variety of different entities and organizations here in the U.S. and OCONUS as well. And we've gained a lot of experience over the years in operating UAS and different techniques and things like that work to utilize these platforms. At the end of the day, a UAS is really nothing more than a flying sensor or data collection device, so it really is something that needs to really be trained on and regularly. And I think obviously why training is so important is it brings a lot of challenges and complexities to operations when you're putting something up in the air. And obviously, if we look at here operations in the U.S. that are controlled by the FAA and such, there's a lot that is at stake if mistakes happen, and hence why training is so critically important in getting the skill set needed to operate this type of equipment. And one of the big things is, I think that looking at operations is training is much more beyond just going and flying a UAS platform in a parking lot or an open field or things like that, because the reality is the customer base that we support, that's not how they're going to be operating these things. As soon as they put them into service and are deploying these operationally, they're going to be obviously their fine motor skills are going to be tested. They're going to be under high stress environments. Incident commanders, command staff, are going to be requesting that they maybe do things that they haven't trained on, and so hence why the training is so relevantly important. And when looking at this technology, really needs to be thought about prior to the hardware acquisition. So as I mentioned, our team has an extensive amount of real-world operational experience, which I think really helps provide the necessary insight to what's needed and required out in the field. When we deploy all of our equipment, basically how we're operating out in the field is on Panasonic TOUGHBOOK devices. And I'll talk a bit more here in the next slide how we're utilizing those, but that's a necessary piece of equipment that deploys with us on every single real world operation, and our field staff is using these devices really as a critical piece of the operation. We offer a broad array of end-to-end solutions and innovative technologies. We get a lot of different customer requests that are unique and sometimes challenging, and I think that's what drives our staff, is to be able to take some of those challenging requirements and develop a solution. And that's really where I think we have strived at. So looking at UAS and Panasonic, as you see there in the photo, and yes, I mean that's a photo from one of our mobile command centers inside, but the Panasonic devices are deployed in all of our different vehicles, our mobile command centers, and then also our staff that are deploying operationally, as well as our training staff. They're always utilizing the TOUGHBOOK devices. And why is really the areas that they're deploying to, there can be a lot of different challenges. So I think, the ruggedization, the weather capability, really provides a robust platform to be able to know that when we get on site somewhere or our customers are on site somewhere, that, the Panasonic ToughBooks really have their back as far as being able to provide a reliable piece of equipment that they can count on. Some of the things that we're utilizing and our customers are utilizing the ToughBooks for is data transfer. So with the UAS doing, your quick field uploads of maps, both 2D and 3D maps, videos, photos, thermal data. The drone is obviously just a tool to collect data. And when it's collecting that data, obviously it's critical that gets processed, sometimes in real time or near real time, sometimes post-processing as well. But it is highly important that we're able to process that data. The other thing is that we're doing is utilizing both TAC, which Jeff had mentioned earlier, and that would be the ATAC as well as WinTAC. And that's the nice thing is, whether the Panasonic ToughBook, whether it's a Windows-based device or an Android-based device, can utilize the ATAC platform or WinTAC very efficiently. And then, of course, we're using those operationally to bring in, the UAS feeds and things like that, to be able to have Blue Force tracking on operations and such. It also, the ToughBook becomes a key pillar for UAS fleet management and being able to get into your software database or your database that you're using and be able to process all of your flight data and your fleet management. So, maintaining batteries, things of that nature. So that thing really gets lugged around everywhere. When we look at streaming is really becoming, I think, probably one of the key pillars of operations and something that we get routinely asked about. And we have a variety of solutions that we provide that enable streaming. Some are LTE based, some can be satellite, Wi-Fi. It just really depends on the customer's needs and requirements. But being able to get into the software, get into the programs that a lot of times are going to be doing the streaming, getting that back to command centers, mobile talks, tactical operations centers, things like that. The Panasonic ToughBook is really going to be a center point of that as well. When we look at flight tracking, being able to log all the flight hours and track all that stuff for record keeping purposes and things like that, we can manage through there. We also have some different airspace management software that we a lot of times are logging into, typically on operations, or our customers are, that they would remote into with the Panasonic ToughBook. This helps mitigate airspace, preventing accidents, infringements, things of that nature. So highly beneficial for that as well. So I know I've probably said a lot of times how beneficial the Panasonic devices are, and I think really and ultimately they are they're the premier device for those individuals that are needing a product that is robust, reliable, ruggedized, field deployable. And we're proud to work with Panasonic and of course be providing their devices to customers that are needing a requirement like that. And so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Jeff, and then I think we may have some time for questions.
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely take some questions. Bob, I think that's everything we had from a on a slide perspective. So,
Okay. Again, everyone, the Ask a Question box is your portal to joining the conversation. Although I'll be voicing your words, and we have a couple questions in the queue already, but I'm going to sneak in, put on my journalist cap here, something that struck me while following the presentation. You have a TOUGHBOOK, basically providing command and control of a UAS. Can you network that to another TOUGHBOOK or a phone or something of that sort to serve as backup in case the TOUGHBOOK proves to be not so tough against some adversarial action?
yeah, I mean, Ryan, I don't know if you want to touch on your mobile solution capability, but yeah, I mean, Bob, obviously we can network different things, and Ryan mentioned the reference pushing video back to a TOC or a tactical operations center. That's fairly common, and it's just how you provide that comm capability varies by operation or sometimes depending on location. But I don't know, Ryan, do you want to touch on your sort of networking capability?
Yeah. So, one of the things that a lot of times we're from a networking capability. Obviously, the TOUGHBOOKs, have the ability to have some of the different models can have LT, SIM cards built into them. But if we're operating in an environment that maybe that's not something feasible. Depending on, like, for example, with our mobile TOCs, our mobile command centers, we have both LT and satellite capability that obviously we're connecting the TOUGHBOOKs to that network. We also build what's called our mission case LTE, which is a field deployable, ruggedized mobile connectivity case. Typically, when our customers or us are setting up on a deployment or an operation, we're booting that thing up. Typically, it's up within about 60 seconds, and we can connect up to about 128 different devices to that. So all the different Panasonic devices would then be networked to a central hub, central point. And with that, we can either do LTE, so cellular-based systems, or satellite as well, with a deployable, flyaway sat dish or BGAN, things like that. And obviously, the choice of the LLT or SAT is going to depend on the environment of operation, as well as connectivity requirements and how many devices, bandwidth, and such.
Okay. Let me do a quick follow-up. Can you also have, with this given network, one TOUGHBOOK running two UASs, possibly toggling back and forth between the two if needed?
Yeah, so that is definitely something. A lot of times where we would see an application more in that respect is where we are typically going to, we would have the operator, let's say, for example, that's utilizing a TOUGHBOOK or one of the tablets, as they're running the software on that, and then they will be streaming that out through the network, either remotely or on site to other users, which then can pull up the near real-time video feed of the drone sensor, so they can actually see the camera and such like that, which obviously works out very well for ISR-type applications.
Okay. All right. Well, let me turn to our audience questions here. First one I have in the queue is, how does Panasonic handle service issues, OCONUS?
Oh, sure. So we have three primary service facilities, one in Japan, one in the UK, and one here in Kansas City. So kind of depends on where we're operating if an issue does occur. Actually, a good example, I used to do some work out at Misawa Air Base in Japan, and one of the things they always raved to us about was being able to, if they had any issues, it would go to our Japan facility and be back the next day. So, whether you buy one, if you buy a TOUGHBOOK here in the States and then now we're operating somewhere, Oconus, we would again just leverage the nearest service facility and send those overnight back and forth back into the deployed area. Or, a lot of people we see, they'll run a spare pool of devices because we're performing critical functions. But one point we get made a lot is, since we're so much more reliable, they do the math and their spare pool can be much smaller with ours. But back to the question, 3 primary facilities, and just depending on which is closer, we would leverage that facility.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned rain and glove modes. How does that work?
Sure. So I was supporting some DoD exercises recently and got to see this in a real world exercise. So it was raining almost the whole time we were operating. But I mean, at a high level, the rain mode essentially isolates your finger input from the distraction of a raindrop. So if you don't have that type of technology, a raindrop can actually trigger an input on the display because it essentially thinks it's your finger. So we isolate those 2, and then glove mode essentially increases the sensitivity of the screen. So we do testing with gloves from a range of different thicknesses. So, everyone's seeing big, thick gloves. We're operating in an extremely cold environment, down to fairly thin, standard issue military gloves. They all work in that mode. So those are the 3 main input modes we have on a few of our devices, and that's what I was referencing when I was talking about the patents around those. So that's essentially it at a high level, how they both work. But they do function very well. So.
Okay. Another question. What sectors, do you see the most activity around UAV solutions?
Well, I'll let Ryan chime in here too, but we see first responders, really just in general, it's exploding from a, technology implementation standpoint. But we see first responders. I was watching a video the other day of search and rescue out in Colorado utilizing a UAV, border patrol, event security. So, if you're planning security around a marathon, sporting event, Super Bowl, concert, whatever. And then, within DoD, a lot of it's in the Special Forces community. But Ryan, I'm sure you've probably got some extra examples.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, Jeff. Yeah, so,
Sure.
As Jeff mentioned, I'll definitely echo, some of the same, the public safety, government, and defense space. I think, UAS has been around for a while now, but it's really proliferated over the past couple of years. It's really changing the landscape of day-to-day response and operations. It's giving, different units, organizations, responders capabilities that they really never had before. And if we look just, for example, at the public safety market, and look at, law enforcement or fire rescue agencies that have helicopters, the reality is, those are very small, even though, those of you that may live in a big city and you think, oh, I see the police helicopter, things like that, flying around routinely. The reality is primarily most of the agencies around the country don't have that kind of capability. So when we look at UAS technology, it has really changed the way they are able to respond to incidences and give them a capability that traditionally in the past they never had. I mentioned this, and having come out of an operational background for most of my life prior to starting the company is, I mention this routinely, and not just because I'm in the business, but I think UAS technology is literally one of the most game-changing pieces of technology we have seen in decades for the public safety, government, defense space. It is, just allowing so many different applications. And, a lot of people think, obviously, when they think UAS, they think, a camera view, but, we're delivering, with UAS, delivering different products and different capabilities, dropping things, all types of capabilities that, speaker systems and light beacons and, both visible and IR lighting systems and, all types of different things that I think really are just enhancing operations. And so, definitely glad to be able to provide these capabilities to those that are, really boots on the ground and need this type of tech.
With this kind of configuration, the TOUGHBOOK and your UASs, where do you see the greatest growth in short-term years to come?
I think, from my perspective, I think really the public safety, government defense space, I think we'll continue to see exponential growth there. Critical infrastructure as well is another large industry that we're seeing a lot of growth and a lot of use case for UAS technology. Really anybody that any industries or any verticals that would need an eye in the sky, and really just to have that.
Okay, I think we lost Ryan for a bit. Jeff, are you there?
I am. Yeah, I think Ryan's having a little comm problem. But anyway, I was going to say too, yeah, you mentioned infrastructure. I was working with a company, I don't know, a month or so ago, and they deploy these solutions as well. And they were talking about a couple of things recently where they were doing railroad inspection. So as opposed to sending someone out to physically inspect, every inch of a rail system, they would just fly a little UAV over the railroad or over the rail and then be able to report incidents. I've seen, they were actually talking about staging for a big event in southern Utah recently. So they filmed the whole area prior and then, did all that video editing work. They also mentioned pipeline inspections. So similar to the rail, they would fly along a pipeline and make sure there's no issues there as opposed to sending someone out to do, those functions. So really across the board, beyond, just the defense space and first responders, but like Ryan mentioned, anywhere you can use an eye in the sky, we can, starting to see more and more of these solutions helping with those problems.
I'm flashing back to the early 90s when commercial remote sensing suddenly exploded on the scene. The French launched Spotimage, and then other satellites began to proliferate. And one of the areas where they offered services was for farmers to be able to track the quality of their crops, see what areas might be blighted or hit by drought, that sort of thing. That would, of course, require different sensors aboard the spacecraft. Well, let's transfer that to UASs. Can your system handle different sensors installed on UASs so they can be customized for individual purposes?
So I've definitely seen that. Back to the example of filming before that big event in southern Utah. So they refer to that as the payload. So that payload can be different cameras. It could be an IR sensor. In that case, they actually deployed a 100 megapixel camera to take extremely detailed photos, which caused some problems afterwards, but that's another story. But yeah, definitely different cameras. We see, as I mentioned, infrared. So yeah, multiple different sensors for different mission sets. But yeah, absolutely, and that's really where some of these guys distinguish themselves is the quality of those different payload options. So.
And it's no problem for the TOUGHBOOK then to be able to process different types of data and give you a real-time picture, using the term picture loosely?
Correct. Yes, sir. One of our most common products here is actually the one that was in Ryan's slide there. That's a QLD display, so extremely high-res display. So when you need to expand a map, a lot of this is mapping. If we're planning a mission set over there, I want to see what's there prior. So take that video back on the ToughBook and then be able to really drill in for extremely high-level detail for that imagery. So yes, absolutely. To take that back, and as Ryan mentioned too, typically see that type of a product in like a tactical operations center, but then also from an individual user standpoint, individual soldier, a lot of times we're pushing that video down to the operator level. So absolutely, so we can take that imagery on both type devices and support the whole environment. So yes, sir.
Okay, Ryan, your comment on the different kinds of payloads that your UASs can carry and tie to the ToughBook. Any limitations?
Really, the limitation comes down to the UAS platform typically. So obviously, it's a little bit of a math and science that ends up coming in place. So the ToughBook is obviously going to be on the ground with the operator. As far as different sensors, though, that go on the drone, it really is going to just depend on the UAS platform. Is it a multi-rotor? Is it a fixed wing? How much battery life do I need for the operations, which is really going to dictate as far as like sensor requirements and things of that nature. But some of the sensors that we are deploying currently on UAS platforms is 30-time optical zoom up to 180 digital zoom. Thermal cameras, laser rangefinders, speakers, different light beacons, and things of that nature, as well as drop mechanisms.
Okay. Well, we have a very timely question here. Are there any requirements or solutions surrounding COVID, such as monitoring crowds or other ideas?
Yeah, so we have, somewhat, we had a solution that prior to COVID release, and obviously has gained a lot of interest, is our drone decon kit. So, one of the things, we work with a lot of hazmat and your CBRNE teams around the country, and one of the things that we had been providing prior to COVID is our drone decon kit, which allows a UAS platform. Doesn't necessarily have to be a UAS, could be a ground, unmanned ground vehicle or whatnot. But typically with a UAS, it allows them to fly into hazardous environments where they may come in contact with different chemicals and things of that nature that they need to decontaminate. And so with the drone decon kit, they can then decontaminate whatever environment that's gone into. And obviously, given the what's going on with COVID and how different UAS we're deploying UAS to the COVID response, as well as our customers are, that is something that has definitely gained a lot of attraction.
Okay. Past few minutes, we've been talking about different applications for your system, different customers, different areas of interest, different sensors. Different customers may have different security requirements for the data flowing between the UAS and the ToughBook. Do you folks offer multi-level security solutions for that data?
Yeah, so all of the connections that are going back and forth between the UAS and the ToughBook, for example, are typically going to be at a minimum AES 256-bit encrypted. Also, depending on the system that we're running, FIPS 140-2 compliant as well. So To answer your question, yes. A lot of it just depends on the specific customer requirements and what type of data that they're wanting to send, whether that's data packets or video, things like that, and such. But the answer would be yes.
You offer the different data security levels based on customer needs.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, let me ask one more very general question of my own. And that is, what do you think is the strong point as UAS use continues to proliferate? What is the strong point with having this connectivity, and where do you go from here?
Well, I think at from a UAS perspective, I think at the end of the day, connectivity is really the core at everything that we're doing, and that's as I mentioned earlier, that's where I think the Panasonic device really excels is during any type of UAS operations, having the robust specifications that their systems do, and basically having those as a field deployable device as part of that end-to-end solution of the UAS. Because at the end of the day, if you really think about it, I mean, obviously the UAS, you're putting it up there, but you're feeding back data, which is then obviously coming to a device, the TOUGHBOOK, and then it's going out via some type of connectivity, whether LTE, SAT, or some variation thereof. And so I think those are, essentially the device itself, meaning the TOUGHBOOK or the connectivity, LTE or SAT, really is at the core. And I think without having well-built products and connectivity, I think you're definitely just not harnessing the full potential of UAS.
Yeah, and Bob, I'll jump in real quick too. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I mentioned our wireless capability in the presentation, so we see a lot of people using LTE to communicate with a vehicle. So us being able to have that extremely strong connection helps with that communications piece. And then we even have some that use the GPS functionality of our LTE radios, since that connection would be so strong. So absolutely, we can also support dual networks. So back to that DoD exercise I referenced earlier, we were actually using a TOUGHBOOK on 2 different networks, one on the tactical network and then one over LTE. So all those different options allow us to, stand up and support multiple different environments. So.
Okay. Well, on that note, let's conclude our Signal Media webinar for today. I want to thank our experts for their presentation, and thanks to all of you attendees for joining us. Our presenters will try to respond directly by email to any unanswered questions in the queue. Now, you can link to the archived version of this webinar, along with previous Signal webinars, on the Signal Magazine website at www.afcia.org/signal/webinar. Thank you again, and have a good day.